I could remember that one of these days, it was a vacational, I took a vacational job in the brewery in Kaduna, and to bring an alcoholic to the brewery became a serious issue. And that was how I got myself drunk in the brewery. And some days you go to the beer bottling hall, you catch the alcohol when it's in transit, break the bottles, drink, and it will be recorded as breakages. But this day I went to the brew house, and I took a jug of Golda, and then by the time I was coming out of the brewery, I was drunk. Management must not know that I got drunk on duty, and I was pushed inside the vehicle and say, go home. By the time I got to the bus stop, I was completely blacked out. I couldn't trace my way home. It took almost about 2 hours to get home. And by the time I got home, yours sincerely was drunk for about 3 days. I thought I was going to die. Welcome, viewers. As I was about writing my West African School Certificate exam, I began to look around for schools that I could go to. And so, by my final year, I made a trip to a cousin of mine who was working in Kaduna. And then by the time I got to Kaduna, I was excited by the city. I went to train. I went by train for the first time. And it was exciting. By the time I got to a place they call Mada, they used to have pig meat. So we're excited that we were eating pig meat in transit. So each time when I hear people talking that when you come to Mada, you are going to have pig meat, a lot of pig meat there. So I was looking forward to it. So when I got to Mada, I ate pig meat, and I was excited. I got to Kaduna, I was well received. He treated me so well. When I stayed throughout the period of the long vacation, I was with him. He works in the NTA as a broadcaster. And sometimes he will carry us to the studio. He will drive us around the city. That time, Kingsway was there, Leventis was there, and he will take us to Kingsway stores and Bata. By the time I was coming back to school, we bought a Bata's Cortina, sandals. That was the in thing then. And then he bought cornflakes, bought Pronto. These things are not there. Pronto and all these things are gradually disappearing next week. And I came back to school. And this is how, that was how I started my journey, and I got admission to Kaduna Polytechnic. In the process of going to Kaduna, I passed through this school in Banawa, the College of Environmental Studies. And I started asking questions. They say they do architecture there, they do building, they do land surveying, they do photogrammetry, and then they do estate management. And they began to educate us gradually and say, in estate management, you're going to manage people's estate. And that was why I chose, estate management as a course. And the admission came. And by the admission came, it was well celebrated in the house. And by the time I got home. And to make things more exciting, that was a period where the Benue State government was giving scholarship. And that was to go to school on scholarship to read estate management. And by the time they paid the first tranche of the scholarship, about 300 naira at that time, it was a lot of money. And we schooled when the school was really, really the government was so very caring to students. I could remember that in school then you go to the school cafeteria, breakfast was 25 kobo, lunch and dinner was 50 kobo. And with breakfast, you could eat scrambled eggs, you could take Quaker oat, you could drink tea, you have sugar in jugs. a basket, in basins. You could drink as much as the quantity you could have. And then for lunch, especially on Fridays, we were served chicken. And a quarter of a chicken will be turned into 4 parts, a quarter will be given to students. And that was how we were feeding. We enjoyed ourselves. And then with the scholarship money coming and money from uncles, from mommy and daddy, I had a lot of money at home, in the school. I could remember, that has to begin to affect our style of life. Money was coming, and you remember I told you previously that I started drinking at the terminal end of my secondary school, and now with less supervision, now I joined some drinkers, and we'll go to the club in Kaduna to drink. I could remember one of these days that I got drunk and I came to the school, the class. It was an evening class. There were some professionals that were teaching us some core courses, like public health engineering. There were some that were teaching us valuation, and then legal law. They were teaching us law of contracts, land law of arbitration and awards. And these ones were lecturers, lawyers in the town, and so they come during evening session to take us because of their own practice. And so I got drunk to come to class, attend class. And I almost closed the class that day. And what happened? The lecturer was so annoyed and fixed a compulsory test the following day. Apparently, we were so annoyed the way I disrupted the class, and he was bent on failing me on the course. But by the time I got to the dormitory, I didn't see any of my classmates. They were all in the library. And by the time I inquired, they said the man was annoyed with me because of the way I disrupted his class when I drank and entered his class. And what happened? I cleaned my face, and then I went to cram all the cases in land law. And then at the end, I had an A in that subject. And when the man was about distributing the papers, he said, I want to tell you that you should not follow any bad boy to do some things naughty. There are some boys here that disrupted class previously, and then this boy came to be the best in the paper that I'm marking. He has excelled, but don't follow him. That was how I went through school, and that I went through school from the period of 1976 to 81. I read estate management, started with introductory, and then the ND, National Diploma, then the HND that we did later. Throughout the 5-year course, I was on scholarship. And that was how I finished the course. And then the day that we finished, it was a day of celebration. We went to town, and we closed the nightclub. We were dancing. We were celebrating. I could remember that we had to even take a trip. In the few days of our rounding up in school, we had to take a trip to go to visit our friend in Ahmadu Bello University. There are some of our boys that were there, they were doing medicine. We'll arrange, go there, and then we'll drink in the club. There is a place called Kudiano Nightclub. We'll go to the club and then drink till daybreak. Any time that they pay scholarship money, all of us have a way of communicating with ourselves. And that was how, anytime they pay, they'll move from Makurdi, they'll come to pay in Kaduna, move to Zaria. And so the day they are finishing payment in Zaria, all of us will converge in Zaria. What were we doing? We were drinking and celebrating. But God, it was merciful. I didn't know God especially that time because I was still drinking, but God was preserving our lives. And that is how we continued. But it was very unfortunate. I could remember that one of these days, it was a vacational, I took a vacational job in the brewery in Kaduna, and to bring an alcoholic to the brewery became a serious issue. And that was how I got myself drunk in the brewery. And some days you go to the beer bottling hall, you catch the alcohol. When it's in transit, break the bottles, drink, and it will be recorded as breakages. But this day I went to the brew house and I took a jug of Gouda, and then by the time I was coming out of the brewery, I was drunk. Management must not know that I got drunk on duty, and I was pushed inside the vehicle and say, go home. By the time I got to the bus stop, I was completely blackout. I couldn't trace my way home. It took almost about 2 hours to get home. And by the time I got home, yours sincerely was drunk for about 3 days. I thought I was going to die. But God showed me mercy. And that was how I ended up, finishing, and then with high grade. And then ended up coming for youth service. And I was posted to the Federal Capital Territory, the FCDA, the Federal Capital Development Authority. And I was posted to Abuja to do my youth service. That was 1981. That was how I ended up coming to Abuja, 1981, as a youth corper. Thank you so much. You're welcome to the next series. God bless you.
Viewers, the son of Alphonsus Anejo and Juliana Anejo, the boy that came from almost a perfect home, the boy that was a mass server in secondary school, went to the brew house and carried a jug of unadulterated alcohol and drank, and was drunk for the next 3 days. A boy, what else could his parents have done for him? How else could they have brought him up? Himself told you he had an exciting, comfortable, disciplined, well-honed childhood. But see how it turned out. Somebody like that will go and start to disrupt classes. I remember that in those days that he was a student in Kaduna Polytechnic, traveling between Kaduna and Zaria, that road was a death trap. So many people were dying on that road every day. But that was when they continuously went to spend time in Zaria, KBU students, partying throughout the night. How is it that God spared his life? If God did not have a specific call upon his life, many, many young people died on that road. It was always in the news. All kinds of accidents. Drunken drivers trying to overtake 74 kilometers between Zaria and Kaduna, but it was a death trap. Almost on a daily basis, people were dying on that road. I also used to drive on that road. And God preserved his life. God kept him. God favored him. He passed very well, and he qualified as an estate surveyor and a valuer. Eventually was posted to Abuja for NYSC. The remaining of this story you will find very exciting. Let us find out if Chris continued to drink or the bottle will reject him one day. Thank you for giving us your attention today. Please do not forget to subscribe to this channel and forward this clip to your friends. Let it be a lesson that a boy that comes from a perfect background can turn out to be an instrument in the hands of the enemy of his own soul. But God is gracious. God is compassionate. We will hear the rest of Chris's story. That is where the lesson will be. Thank you, and God bless you.